Alright class, I just want to do a demonstration on how do you draw this still life. I started off by blocking out a basic line drawing. I don't know if you can see it very well up at the top. And I did it by taking and measuring on the screen just like we have been with our pencil, and sighting and seeing and measuring. Well, I just kind of generally measured on the screen off of that and just kind of went, okay, 1 to 1, and I could use my pencil the same way and go, okay, 1 to a half, and kind of get the dimensions accurate. And I got a basic contour drawing. It's a little bit light, so I'm going to draw with a dark pencil. But you're going to want to do this with an H pencil. So a 2H pencil to start with this, so that you have a really light contour sketch. Step is a 2H pencil, light, accurate contour drawing on your 18 by 24 paper, right? Just like the directions say. Okay. You're going to want to mark off the edges of not just the outline of everything, but also like things like the shadow edges. So that's like an outline, but you want to mark off light things like here inside the nose. The way highlights change, you're going to want to mark that off, and measure that type of stuff too, not just the outside form and the inside form, but this is part of it. Okay. Let me just pull up real quick the assignment. That way you have that clearly gone over. So you have the home page, hit module there at the top. I'm going to go down to week 9 and 10. Here we go. This is the Vanitas still life in full value. This is the lecture I want you to watch. And then we're doing the demonstration right now. There's a really interesting documentary here you need to watch, and this one about how to make a still life. This is based on kind of painting type of stuff, but it'll still work really well for what we're doing, to reference and to look at and help you understand more of this. Then you're going to pull up that still life to draw, which I just had, and you're going to be drawing off that. But I want you to look at this with me, the assignment, because I've been getting a lot of people not really looking at the actual assignment sheet and paying attention to what's going on there, and turning in things that don't match the assignment, and then you're wondering why you're getting 0 points, because you must follow the assignment directions. That's the point, okay? So it's clear to me that some people aren't reading the sheets when they're doing completely different assignments. So you're going to reproduce the image on the page, still life to draw, using sight, see, and measuring. You're actually going to measure it out and get it pretty accurate. It needs to be as close of a reproduction as possible. The method of drawing should be a continuous tone, full value. That means a full range of blacks, grays, and the white. It's going to take you about 8 to 10 hours because this is for 2 weeks of lab time. Full value. Copy the photograph as closely as possible. So the first step is that sketching, and you're, like I just said here, you're going to need that 2H pencil for the sketch, charcoal pencil, and kneaded eraser. You know what those are already. That kneaded eraser works really good for charcoal. You can do a blending stump. We talked about this before, also called a tortillon. I talked to you in previous lectures about how you could use a paper towel really rolled up tightly if you wanted, but these are really nice because they're purposely designed for this, and you can get a really smooth, controlled tone. You're going to do this on your 18 by 24 inch drawing paper, and you're going to submit a clear photograph or scan, but photograph is preferable if you're drawing because it's hard to scan 18 by 24 inch paper. Most of you probably don't have a scanner that big. On a neutral background or wall, and you're going to submit it to the critique as well. Okay? We go over this in the lecture, but Vanitas is a style of painting in the lecture. Still life, we've talked a lot about what that is. Values, and this full value is lightness and darkness of color or tone. We're doing achromatic, which is no color, just black and white. I'm going to work through all these terminologies I've talked to you about many times for you to review. You got to follow the assignment directions. If you don't follow the assignment directions, I'm not going to accept the work because I've gotten too many pieces where people are not even paying attention and doing completely different things. So I'm cracking down on that. This deep into the semester, you should be able to do that by now. Okay? That makes that pretty clear. So you have this still life, you're going to draw it. You have your sketch. We're going to do it by measuring up here. Like I'm going up onto the screen right now and looking at it. It's almost like 1 to 1. So I'm going to do a really light sketch. Once I get something accurate, I'm going to check it and really see if I've gotten the shapes accurately. It looks like I pretty much have. I got a little bit of things to figure out here, but some of that's going to happen by the value. I want you to focus on certain things in the drawing. For sure, you need to get the book, the skull, the head, and this set up here. Okay? This is the main part I want you to get really accurate, including all this drapery. You can add this in if you want, and this, but I want you to focus on this part of the still life. This is a photograph of a setup in class, but a photograph that this is the type of thing we'd be drawing in class. The reason why we're doing this off a photograph is I want you to really spend some time to be able to figure out the values and how to do it. And a lot of times at first it's hard to set up a still life properly with enough light for people to do this at home. Later on you'll set up your own still life. But this is also for me to check and see how you're doing on those proportions and figuring stuff out. Okay? So you'll see from my sketch that I included here this shape here, the skull, the book, and this candlestick with the fruit on it. I have not included the stuff on top up here, and that's okay. So here it is, pretty accurate. You probably can't see it super well because it's light, but you can see it now. What am I going to do now is I'm going to actually spend some time shading it and showing you how I would do that, okay? There's that drawing. So after I do this, what's my next step? Is to shade the drawing with charcoal pencil. Okay? How do I start? This is a good question. How do I start? How did you start with the sphere? If you remember, and the values scale you already did, I would like you to probably take out that value scale and use it to reference. Take out your value scale to reference. That will help you a lot. Okay? I want you to start by making sure in your drawing that you marked off where the shadow edges are and things, so you know where that is. And I want you to start by adding a light tone of shade to the whole drawing. What do I mean by that? Let's think about it here for a second and talk about it together. I'm going to go back to the screen so you can see this. I mean all the areas where there's shade. There's none over here, but there is some over here, right? I want you to add a light tone to them. All these areas. Not overly dark yet, because we're going to be darkening it up depending on what's around it. And certain areas are going to get really black, black, black. But I want you to add all these areas a light tone, not even a little above middle gray, because I want you to know everything that's in shadow. And then we can build in and add the deepest darks, okay? So let's try this together. I'm going to go back to you mostly seeing this. So you can see how I'm doing this. Working on a smaller piece of paper. Do not be deceived. You must be working on 18 by 24 inch paper. Okay? The reason why I am is so that you can see the whole drawing. You should be working on 18 by 24 inch paper. Alright, so I'm going to start by adding a very light tone. I can hold my pencil different ways that work for me, but I'm going to do it like this. You're going to be using charcoal, and you're adding this light tone. You can be using the blending stump too. About everywhere that's in shade, I'm just adding the lightest of tones. If I get part of it wrong, I'm just going to come in there and just erase it carefully. I can already see that because I needed to darken up the drawing for you to be able to see it, that my line drawing was too dark. And it's going to pop out a little bit. So there's a way to fix that. If you did that, don't despair. I'm watching my hand. I'm not watching my hand very much. I'm really looking at that drawing a lot. That photograph, I should say, a lot, to make sure that I'm really staying with it. I have already marked out a lot of the areas that are in shade with edges. I've marked the edges with in my contour, so I can map and follow that image. I'm basically mapped out the areas that are darker, alright, already. When I did my contour drawing, I did little marks where it's shadow. So I know basically where I need to put it. It's not like I'm doing it randomly. And I'm adding that lightest, kind of not the lightest, but maybe number 2 light to 3, just above middle gray. From that value scale sheet you did already, I'm kind of doing a really light tone. Tone is a way of saying like a color, but it's a value. When I say tone, that's what I'm talking about. So I'm adding that on there, and I'm just getting it all established because I really want to know where the shadow is in general. So I'm not like guessing later on and trying to figure it all out. I want to know everything that's in the dark part of it. What I mean by guessing is that I've already measured it out. I know where it's at. Now I'm adding it over it, a whole light-ish tone over it, so that later on when I'm trying to figure out and squint my eyes and look at the image to see what's the darkest darks, I'm not guessing, oh, is it inside this part or this part? I know where the shadow part is, so then I can get really specific with the really dark darks because I know it's already in the right location because I've measured it and I already know I'm in the shadow zone. So it's just a way for me to basically make sure I'm not confused when I'm trying to map all these things out and get the values set. I'm doing myself a favor by immediately adding it something to compare the darkest darks to. If that makes any sense, I'm hoping it does. I can compare to that middle light gray, a little above middle gray that I'm putting down right now, and it helps me know how much darker I need to make the darkest darks. And there'll be spots I possibly even need to actually erase a little bit, maybe, if I didn't get it right, and get that really lightest, barely above white color too. I'm working over here on this section where there's a shadow that's like an L shape, and I realize I didn't mark this off. So I'm going to take and look at my photograph and see where it goes. I'm measuring it right now on the photograph. And I know I'm noticing that I can use my angle measuring, right? Like we talked about with the corner of a room, and get those angles right. I'm just going to give myself a little mark. These are like the hash marks you did for when you did the measuring, the proportional drawing. You can do these for angles and things. And the edges of shadows, you can give yourself little hash marks to help you identify where things go and where the edges of things are, like shadow edges. Okay? So I'm going to be building that up. I'm using the side of mine. You can use the tip of it if you want, but it doesn't work as well to get an even tone. It ends up making like really dark marks, unfortunately. So I've got my charcoal pencil and my blending stump, and I'm just doing that work really carefully. You can do the underhand grip if you want with this. It's easy for it to get really dark really easily, so you gotta really go slow and really hover above it. I'm not going to try to burnish too deeply in here with this blending stump at first, because otherwise I'll push it into the paper. What I mean by burnish, I've said this a few times, is if you really push hard with your blending stump, what it is the fibers in the paper are going to get worn down and also start being compressed, and then it'll be really hard to add any more and also harder to erase. So you don't want to, if you're blending, you want to know that you're almost to the end of it, and also that you're doing the right tone. You don't want to push too hard, basically, while you're building it up. Okay? So here's that shadow that I'm building up, and I'm using my pencil edge very carefully. If I get a little too dark in spots and it's not making sense, and it's not matching the value pattern in the shadows and the shading, then I can come back and take some of that off with my kneaded eraser. Talk to you guys about dabbing it a little bit. I'm also going to use my pencil, charcoal pencil lead, not charcoal lead, to be able to add some texture to things, right? And I kind of want to make sure I'm working in a way that follows the contour of things. What do I mean by that? Well, since, like, for example, the skull, the inside of the eye here, the eye socket goes in at a kind of a rounded shape and form. I don't want to go on top of that and say I had the eye right here. I don't want to draw on my drawing. That's one of the eyes. I don't want to go in that and shade it with like hash marks that look like a pattern like this, or even flat. I want to shade in a way that matches the contour. We'll talk more about this as we go into the idea of cross contour drawings. We're going to get into this, but it's basically, you can imagine an ant marching over the surface of something, like the head and the ant's marching. How would it move what path would it take? And that would be convex and concave lines. Concave when it goes in and convex when it goes out. And so you want your shading to kind of match the surface in that way, so you don't get something that looks like a pattern on the top of it. You're really trying to get really realistic tones built up here. Okay? This is a little harder with charcoal because I'm working small so you guys can see the whole image. And charcoal pencil has a fatter tip on it. Nonetheless, I'm going to keep plowing forward with this. And after I get that built up pretty well, not pretty well, get it really well built up, and all the values, the lightest, that little bit above middle gray value on everything that's in shade, everywhere in the drawing. I'm realizing I got some issues here. This is a chance too, while you're looking at it and looking at the photograph, if you have some contour issues that your drawing's not accurate, then go ahead and fix those right now, because you don't want to spend forever shading a drawing that's not accurate, right? That's going to be a pain, and you're not going to be able to shade it properly if your drawing's not accurate, right? It won't ever shade correctly because the shapes are wrong to begin with. So if you discover things like that as you're going, then do yourself a favor and spend the time to fix them so that you're not fighting against it the whole time, okay? When you're doing this, you're really going to want to go slow and really control the edge that you're trying to define, okay? And it's okay to spin your paper around as you're working. You don't want to just hold it one direction only. Even on that board, you can flip it around a little. It can help a lot when you're drawing, when you're shading and drawing, to be able to get to different sides of it. You don't have to keep it upright only this one direction. While you're working, you can flip it around a little. That can be very helpful, especially for some of this shading type of work. It doesn't work so well for when you're trying to do observational drawing, the Site C measure, because you want to keep everything in the same stationary position overall. But for this type of stuff, it can be helpful so you can get to an area without smearing everything. And it seems like I'm being loose, but I'm actually being very careful with the edges. I'm moving my pencil just very carefully, not building it up too quickly. Sometimes I squint my eyes and look at something because it helps me see the value pattern, the light logic across it. Squinting your eyes gets rid of all the extra detail, and then you can see the values better, where you can see where the darkest and lightest parts of it and the pattern of those shapes of value that creates something realistic in a drawing that you're trying to match, because that's how the world, we don't see the world in lines so much. Of course, when we're looking at a line drawing we do, but other things, we see it in value patterns and color and shapes that way, okay? So squinting your eyes helps you, what I mean by kind of getting them out of focus, squinting them, it helps you not see all the little details of everything, like writing and all the little details, like the book has these extra like patterning on it, and just to focus on that, the shapes of the values, the tones. Because that's what you're trying to get accurate, the shapes of the tones. If you get the shapes of the tones accurately put on there, the drawing that you're making, the piece that you're drawing, in this case, a photograph, or if it was actually pieces of a still life, it'll actually, those things will emerge out of the shapes. It'll look like it's accurate. If you get all the values accurate, it'll look in the right shapes. It'll look like the thing that you're drawing. So I'm going to keep going in here and adding these values over all these sections, that middle, just above middle gray to middle gray. I'm not trying to add the deepest values yet. I'm just trying to get everything in shadow that's in shade or shadow, a gray tone, so that I know that that's the shadow section, the part in shade or shadow. And I want it to be pretty light because I don't want to go too quickly. I want to build it up accurately. If I try to get really, really dark with all of it right away, I won't have any room to get accuracy, because if you remember from your last assignment in the lectures, values are in relationship to one another. And so if you get everything so dark, 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 then you can't have that full range. It's too hard to go in and erase, and you end up with just all black and all white, and it doesn't look realistic. So I'm trying to get that lighter tone just put on there, so I know it's in shadow, but it's not so dark that I can't have any room. I don't have any room left to keep adding deeper values, the darker values. And it's not so hardly put on there, so darkly put on with a hard pressure is what I mean by hard put on. It's not so drilled into the paper that I can't erase it a little bit if I need to really take it back a little bit like that. So you got to just have a light touch. It's a challenge, but I believe in you. You can do it. And you're going to just do this accurately. You're not just willy-nilly putting it everywhere. I'm actually looking at that photograph most of the time. I'm not looking at my hand constantly, but I'm really trying to focus on the little value shifts everywhere in the photograph, not just the big ones, but tiny little ones even too, and get something that's feeling pretty accurate. So after I get through all that, there's more to be done, but you can see how it's developing. Then that's when I'll go in and start adding the deepest values in spots. Now I really want to squint my eyes and look at this drawing and see where are the deepest values in this drawing. Squint your eyes. Drawing, I say drawing, but I mean photograph. Where are the deepest values in this photograph? Where should they be the deepest on my drawing? Well, you see, if you squint your eyes and look at the photograph that we're drawing, right here and here and here and here on the skull is really dark. We know the light source is coming from this direction by the way the shadows are casting. So all this over here is very dark as well. And we have down here a really dark value. These lines are very dark. And then over here in this tablecloth, there's some really dark values. So after I add that middle gray, I guess you could say a step or two above middle gray. I keep saying middle gray, but somewhere in that range, that light tone. Then I can come in and add the darkest darks to these spots. It'll give me a chance to really get that range of value. What do I mean? We'll have a light tone, and if I add those dark, dark, darks in the accurate spots, right? For example, right here and in here, there's a little loop of white in there, so I don't want to leave that out. And really get the darkest tones in there. You have to be bold and really have it measured out and know it's accurate. Okay, and I'm going to do it here too. I'm looking at the shape of it. I'm not just willy-nilly doing it like every, just going, I'm actually looking at that shape. I have it measured out. I know what shape it is. What it does is it gives me from here all the way down to the lightest type of gray. I actually have some grays that are lighter than this even. It gives me a range that I can play with inside of it. That range is like your value scale that you did on your last assignment. What do I mean by that? Remember this that you redid? If you hold up your drawing to that, you have it in your sketchbook. You can compare some of your values in the photograph. Hold this up to the photograph even. Well, if I have the lighter lights on my drawing, like this over here, you can see the lighter light here. And I just added the closest I can get to black with my charcoal pencil on there in these sections. Now I have a whole range of continuous tone in between here that I can play with, because I know nothing's going to be darker than those, and there are maybe a few things that are really, really light gray, but overall everything's going to be between here. And so I can really squint my eyes and see the little variations and play with that tone fully in between to get all those different shapes of tones that are in between these things, just like you did on the sphere, the continuous tone, and that becomes really accurate. Once you have all those tones and the variations, even if they're very subtle, you can get something that feels like a really lifelike drawing, right? When you're doing this in life, when you're doing it from a photograph. Especially if I preserve those white spots, right? We've talked about this before, but they're called highlights, where the light is bouncing back. I want to preserve all those highlights on the grapes, parts that are shinier, and keep those parts that are white fully white. But in here, there's all kinds of little light grays on the face of the skeleton, what would have been the face. And if you get those really light grays, then you're going to get something that's feeling really accurate. Those are those really, really light grays. And if it's feeling accurate in the tones, then it'll start to feel really lifelike, and that you're getting something that you can be really proud of, because you're rendering something that feels like a observational drawing that's really lifelike with its values. You have the observation accurate with the contour, and then once you start adding more accurate values, it starts to get closer and closer to that feeling of looking into a window of another world or another place or a setup. And that's where I think a lot of people start having a moment where they feel really awesome about this, because the skills are coming together and they're creating something that they're really proud of and they've been wanting to be able to do for a really long time, to draw something accurately like this. So now that I have the lighter lights, the lighter sections, and the really dark, I can kind of play and have fun with really getting these really light kind of tones in the face too. Those are those barely there light tones. I want to mark them off and see where they are. There's all these highlights on the head, but then there's a lot of really light tone that I have to be pretty careful and just barely put on there. When I say barely do, I mean barely, just carefully with my pencil, with the charcoal pencil, put it on there. And this is where it gets really useful to use that tortillon, because you can kind of softly just put a little bit of value on there and get things. And if you get it messed up and it's like, okay, that's not looking accurate, you can always come in and take it off with your kneaded eraser, as long as you're not pushing down really hard on your pencil and also not pushing down too hard with your tortillon, your blending stump, where you're getting it to where you're burnishing it up and the paper won't take any more abuse, where it's starting to get where it could rip / also there's just no way to get that charcoal out of there. So I see a few spots where I didn't get my darkest values in there. I can come back in and keep doing this. And I'm just carefully building it up bit by bit, marking off highlights and working my way through and doing some comparative looking at measuring the value comparatively by really squinting my eyes and seeing in a section like what's lighter, what's darker. There's sections that are really bright highlights in the eyes and the skull, eye sockets. I just want to barely do that, have just very light tones on there. The whole thing up here can't be white, because the only thing that can be really white are the highlights on the head, right? Because if your brightest white is the white of your paper, and you have a highlight that needs to be like pure white, then everything else has to actually have even a slightest bit of tone to it. And this is where it can be really useful to use these blending stumps to add just a little bit of tone and come back in, and you can even erase some of it off if you get a little too dark. But your blending stump can break down and the edge can get a little raggedy, literally break down, and also as an idea it can get where it doesn't work so well, so you really do need to use your charcoal pencil too to get those accurate shapes of tone. This is why it's going to take you a long time. So I said this is an 8 to 10 hour project, because I started off at the beginning with my contour drawing already done, because I don't think you needed to have a demonstration of that, because we've been doing a lot of that work. And now this is a 40-minute demo, and I'm just barely scratching the surface of the lighter tone being put around it in shade and shadow. I still actually have some areas where I should do that, like up here on the top box here is all in shade. And then I've just barely begun to really put those darkest values in the spot, so I have the difference, the spectrum range, like my value scale, so I have something to understand where I'm working between the darkest and the lighter. Like the value scale, I can play with all those continuous tones in there and get the shapes of them right. And now I got a lot of time that I have to spend really getting all those in between tones and some more detail, like on the edge of this box. I'm not going to worry about trying to get this like shape of almost like filigree or whatever it is. It's not filigree, but a spiral work on the book. I'm not going to worry about that. But I really want to render like the cloth accurately over here so that it feels like it's falling away in space, that it's actually real in space and the values are real. And I'm going to, you got a lot of time to spend to get that full range. This is just the beginning stage. If you turn in a drawing like this that's only barely shaded, then that's not going to be a good grade, okay? That's going to be barely doing your very base level, basically like 50%, half the points. If you do something like this, you really got to spend some time getting the shading down and accurate. And you need to reach out and ask questions. If you're having a hard time, post things in the question answer board. Really spend some time with this. Message me. We can set up a Zoom meeting if you need help. There's all different ways you can help. I can help you. But if you don't reach out, then I I can't help you, okay? So I also want to talk about, after you're done with this, you're going to use this here at the end of the module, this discussion, to post your picture, and we're going to have a full critique. This is worth 20 points, and this critique is worth 10 points. You're going to post your work, tell us how the process was like for you. You know, I found it difficult. I didn't like the charcoal. The charcoal worked really well for me. Things like that. Once I got into my blending stump, that helped me a lot. Then you're going to post comments on everyone's work. Tell them things that are working and not working. Things you could talk about. The quality of the line or texture in the piece. There's not a lot of things in this that have line work, but there are some things. Does it feel like it's realistic in its proportions? Are the shapes and sizes of the different tones and also the objects looking realistic compared to each other? The range of value and tones. Does it have enough of a range? Is it looking like an accurate reproduction? If it only really the lights and the darks, is it only all middle gray? One thing I'm going to really stress right now is that a beginner kind of novice thing that happens a lot is everything kind of ends up looking like this light gray right here, or middle gray. And there's not any of the darkest darks. You got to really add those darkest darks. And then there's not any of those really lights that are almost white. So you really want to have that full range. Okay? It's hard to do, and that's why you really got to look at the image, the drawing, and then squint your eyes. So you're looking and squinting. You're looking, you're squinting. You're squinting your eyes at your drawing. You're looking at it. You're saying, okay, is this the darkness in this, are the tones here matching the photograph back and forth? You're using the value scale that you have. Let's go down to that you already made to help you reference against the photograph and your drawing. You're going, okay, is that looking accurate? Which one of these is on the photograph? Which one of these matches the photograph here? Okay, you're going, okay, that right there is even lighter than this, so it's somewhere in here. It might even be in between them, and that'll help you reference it and say, okay, what about this really dark part over here, down in there? Oop, if I squint my eyes, it's kind of close to, this is this part of the drawing I'm looking at. It looks like it's kind of close into here. And the inside where it's all like cracked and open even further down there, that's like really black. So that part in there that I have should be like the black. Same with down in here, you can see these parts are like the really black. Okay? So you want to use that to help you. It'll help you a lot. You did all that work creating that value scale, so use it for your benefit in this, okay, when you're working on this project. So that takes it through basically the first demonstration. I want to show you the ideas here, and you got to build it all the way up, so I'm going to keep building it and get that full range of values. Don't be afraid to use all your tools. Some of you have smaller blending stumps help a lot. You can get a really crisp edge. If you blend things, like let me see if I can show you this. I'll go back to a bigger screen. If you blend things and you're not really happy with how it's taking away the texture or the sharpness of something, you can come in, and add the texture back. So there's areas on this skull that have quite a bit of texture in them, right? You can see in different spots. And if I blend it too much over the book, and it doesn't let the texture come through, I can come back in and add it. I can come back into my drawing and darken it up, erase parts. If I got something off, like the edge got too weak, it's not sharp enough because the way I blended it, which is happening there, I can come back in and really sharpen it up again with my pencil. You're using the blending, you don't want it to look like I said in the last one, in the video demonstration that I posted of the sphere that someone else did. This is a novice looking move if you have it look just like totally smudgy blended. You want it to use the blending to set down tones and then come in with your pencil and add things back if you need to. So you're working back and forth, using this, using your charcoal pencil, using your eraser, using your tortolin, and working back and forth to really get accurate things, textures, edges, tones, using all the tools at your disposal. And you can get things tightened back up again with your charcoal pencil and edges and textures. You can get blending happening with this. You can take it away and bring it back to the lightest tones if you need to with your kneaded eraser. So you're really just working through all that. I've been doing some of the work with a pencil. That's because this drawing's a lot smaller than yours would be. Because I need to show the whole thing on the camera on my desk. And the charcoal pencil doesn't get as tight of a lead. You can't get it as pointy of a lead. Tight is the wrong word. As sharp, pointy of a lead charcoal on it, so it's too hard for me to shade all of it. But you're using these charcoal pencils and you're pulling it off. If you get it too dark in some spots, you can pull it off and smooth it back. So I think you're getting the idea, hopefully, that you're working back and forth. You have the lighter tone all set over the whole thing, not the lightest gray, but like step 2 or 3. And then you're building in the darkest darks next, so you have this spectrum. And from there, you can then, after that, do all the in-betweens, okay? So, how do you do this again? Let's just review it. 2H pencil, accurate contour drawing, alright? Shade the drawing with charcoal pencil. How do you start? Take out your value scale. Add a light tone of shade over the whole drawing. That's step number 2 we did. Step 3 was add the darkest darks, right? That's the black and really dark gray. Add the darkest darks and the really dark gray. That's step 3. Now, what's step 4? I just said it a few times, but I want to make sure it's clear. Step 4. What is it? Maybe you know. You can talk to the screen and tell me. It is add all the values in between. Woo! And then step 5 will be cleaning it all up. What do I mean by that? Going through and making sure and really looking at everything and making sure there's no extra weird lines or spots and the brightest brights are there. Cleaning up any spots that are in the brightest bright. Taking your eraser and really taking back where the highlights are. Like right there was an edge on the highlight. I take that off and clean it up. Maybe some of the spots you need to take down, take down a little bit of the the darkness of some of your edges of your pencil drawing. What I mean bring them down is get rid of the extra bits of graphite or charcoal that are too dark or sticking out in different spots and really get it feeling really accurate. Okay, that's it. That's the process. Going to spend a decent amount of time, so I'm going to add a little discussion that's in progress. You can post in if you have questions inside the module. I'm going to add it right there above the critique. Let me show you where it'll be, right above the critique in the module, and it'll say in progress, and that's where you can post if you have questions or show me how it's working as you're going along, and I can give you feedback. Okay? It'll say in progress, Vanitas. All right, guys, take care. Hope you're doing well out there and enjoying your time drawing. It's really fun to do. I think it can be really relaxing and rejuvenating. So get into the zone, put some music on, chill out, get yourself a cup of coffee or water or whatever your beverage of choice is, and just don't spill it on your drawing. And then just get into the zone and work it through. You're going to have a couple sessions with this, so don't rush. Spend the time, and you're going to get good results. I believe in you guys. All right, take care.